Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, everybody, for attending our cabinet meeting of the 10th of December. If there's anyone out there watching us in YouTube land, you're very welcome. We've got a big agenda tonight. There's lots of items on it, but I think some of them are relatively simple, so they'll be quick, and others will require, obviously, a bit more consideration. But it's a big agenda, and if you're at home, I think you can access it on online as well and follow our proceedings as we go. We do have, I think, one apologies for absence that I was aware of, which is Steve Brown. Is that right, Mr. Twyman? No one else?
That's correct, Councillor, and I believe Councillor Lloyd has just joined us.
He has indeed, and I think Chris Shipham was on his way, so we'll welcome him when he arrives. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting?
I have none.
No. Okay, thank you. On then to the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the Cabinet held on the 29th of October. You have those in front of you. As members happy with them as a fair record?
Yeah, agree.
Great, thank you. Item 4 then is urgent items. I understand that there are no urgent items. Is that right, Mr. Twyman?
That's correct.
Thank you. And then item 5 is to receive the minutes of the Cabinet Advisory Panel held on the 7th of December. Just a very quick word about this, if you are watching on YouTube. The Cabinet is the formal decision-making body for the executive of Dartford Borough Council, but we try to involve as many members as possible in our decision-making. And so every Monday before a Cabinet on a Thursday, a full one half of the Council will meet to discuss exactly the same agenda that we're going to go through tonight, and they, via substitution, of course, it means that any member has a chance to take part in that conversation, and they have a chance to look at our agenda, and then we receive a précis of their comments, and hopefully we can reflect exactly what the whole council is thinking. And although the decisions ultimately do rest with the executive, which is us, we do try and take account. And I think in the years that we've been doing this, it's very rare we don't actually respond or listen to seriously the views of the Cabinet Advisory Panel. So the Cabinet Advisory Panel was held on the 7th of December on Monday. It was chaired by Derek, and one of the announcements they made right at the outset was that a stalwart of our Cabinet Advisory Panel system, Councillor Ian Armit, had that day offered his resignation from the council. We'll make a fuller tribute to Ian on Monday at the GAC, but I think just it would be appropriate to say a couple of words now, which is that Ian, I think, is the very epitome of public service in this town. He served as mayor 3 times. He served on a whole raft of really important committees. He had a great passion for the Orchard Theatre. He has a great passion for the Orchard Theatre. He hasn't gone anywhere. He has a great passion for the Orchard Theatre, and he and Lynn have been amazing in terms of the mayoralty and what they achieved. They were the first to, I think, embrace that modernity that comes with the role now, and to link it to the heritage and the traditions of being a mayor. And they serve this borough extremely well over the years. He did us the honour of letting us know some time ago that he wanted to make this change in his life, and he and Lynn would be eventually relocating, and so it didn't come as a surprise to us on Monday to receive his resignation, because we knew it was coming for some months. But nevertheless, it's a sad day for us, and so I think it's appropriate for us to pay our tribute to Ian Armit and Mr. Ian Armit, as we now call him, and also to Lynn, and wish them the very best for their future. So you had the minutes. You've all got that in front of you, yeah? Item 6, references from other committees. I don't think, Mr. Twyman, there are references from other committees. Is that right?
There are none, Chairman.
Thank you. On then to item 7, the Community Infrastructure Levy funding review. We've had a couple of meetings in the run-up to this report, which were open to not just the members on the executive side, but also the opposition side as well. And Sonia Collins, you're here tonight to give us a quick précis. Could you just give us your job title and then off you go?
I'm Head of Planning Services. Evening, members. Thank you. This report updates on the SIL indicative 5-year delivery programme in terms of infrastructure, and it also presents the infrastructure delivery programme and the SIL receipts that we've received as a result of development in the borough from between 2019 and 2020. The report also sets out the requirements with regard to the infrastructure funding statement, which covers Section 106s as well as SIL, and which the Council is now required to publish annually in accordance with legislation. And delegated authority is sought for this to be published when it is completed at the end of the year. I would draw members' attention to the updates to the report sent out earlier today, which ensures that the figures which are set out in Appendix A are actually fully reflected in the report itself. And also to make the point that 5% of the total SIL can be used for SIL administration purposes. But in actual fact, as SIL receipts have increased, this percentage has reduced, so that in 2019-2020, only 1.85% of the receipt was actually spent on the admin costs, meaning that there's more SIL money retained for spend on infrastructure. Thank you.
Well, we like to hear that. Really good. Thank you so much. I mean, it is a complicated system, this, and it's. I think we do administer it in a very straightforward and common sense way, which means we don't end up dipping into it and diverting money from its essential purpose, which is infrastructure in the community. There were some remarks on Monday from the Cabinet Advisory Panel, which largely concerned, if I read it correctly, a later addition to something at Ebbsfleet, a piece of work on the Bean junction related to what I think is, from reading it, it seems to be the plans for the new inland border facility and some work there. I think it's important to make the point that whilst those views are certainly valid, the SIL plan is a really long-term plan for looking at the core infrastructure deliveries rather than what I would honestly say is probably design modifications and work within those plans. But it's a fair point to have made. But I do think that in terms of that particular scheme, our SIL contributions are focused upon the main infrastructure development. That's a fair comment, Sonia, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, and that's a temporary facility there. The facility absolutely
fine. Okay. Other than that, I think the Cabinet Advisory Panel they did discuss it, but they seem to be relatively benign on it, and they were really just interested, I think, more than having queries or suggestions that we were heading in the wrong path. So I think really they endorsed the recommendations. Is there any other member on this? Okay, well, obviously it's a substantial amount of money we've got available to us. We need to spend it wisely. It's also worth remembering that an element of SIL does pass to third tier authorities, lower tier authorities, the parish councils and town councils. So they too will have some contribution to make to local plans in their area. But fundamentally, this is our direction for SIL and transparent and straightforward as it is. So are members happy then to approve this as a recommendation?
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to turn my sound off so I can have a decent cough. Hang on. You don't want to hear that, do you? You're going to tell me you heard that anyway, aren't you? Did you hear that anyway? Right, okay, fine. On then to the next item, which is the item 8, which is the... sorry, there were 4 recommendations there. I mean, I take it that we accept all 4, yeah? Great, thank you. Item 8 then is phases 1A and 2 of the Dartford Town Centre regeneration. This is really asking us for permission to proceed with the tender arrangements, and there is a considerable pressure on time for us this because of the lead times and material as we're all emerging. I promised myself we won't keep on talking about COVID implications because we need to move on from that and deal with the world as it is. But there is a significant COVID implication here in terms of material supply, and we need to make a decision very quickly. Does it need an introduction from anyone? Is an officer to speak to this? No? Okay.
Sonia can speak if you need her to, Chairman.
Sonia, do you want to? Have you got a view on this as well?
I certainly have a view on it. It's certainly something that's transforming Dartford Town Centre, and this is about bringing it forward as soon as possible, really. But I think you've introduced it in terms of the need to award the tender, and that's the decision for members now.
Sure. I think just for the benefit of anyone at home, this is a continuing project and it relates to the next phases, really. If you've been to Dartford recently, you'll have seen that the phase around the Library Museum and the new Brewery Square are approaching, the end of their technical completion. They now need to be dressed and made ready for people to enjoy. But technically they're complete. And this is the next phase, which involves the crucial part of work, which is the High Street and moving up as far as Highfield Road and Instone Road junctions. So it's an important next phase. Okay, members happy then with the recommendations? 2 of them. Okay, thank you. Item 9 then is the town centre PSPO. This is a continuation document, really. We embarked as soon as the PSPO regulations came out. I forget how long ago, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago. We embarked upon the PSPO in order to protect our important assets in the town centre. We need to be cautious here. There are human rights implications if you misuse and overuse these. We don't want to see them used as a kind of as a clumsy weapon. They need to be precise and targeted, and they need to be defending against real problems rather than imaginary ones. But the PSPO that we've had in the town centre has operated really, really well for 3 years or so. It does quite rightly need refreshing. So the document came in front of you with about that. The police have made exactly the same, just in case anyone's concerned about the police comments about resourcing. They've made exactly the same comments this time round that they made at the outset, which was that your PSPO, your problem, which is, they don't mean it quite starkly as that, but what they're saying is they cannot be certain that the introduction of a PSPO will necessarily skew their resources, and so they are looking to us to make sure that we have adequate resources to do the base work on enforcing a PSPO. And I understand that you don't necessarily want to be calling the police for these what will otherwise be civil matters but are now council matters. So that explains the police position, which is no different from they've been operating in the last 3 or 4 years. But I think the practical situation, Sherry, is that the police have actually been very helpful once we've taken on the work. Is that right? Or Richard might know, but once we've kind of identified a problem, the police haven't really let us down in terms of serious problems that have arisen, have they?
Sorry, Chairman, slightly distracted there by the image of myself on screen, which seems very psychedelic and colourful.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. We were just wondering.
Apologies about that. I assure you, I'm not in a rave anywhere. I think
well, as they said on Harry Met Sally, I'll have whatever she's having.
In terms of the police response and comments, I think they're exactly as we would have expected. I don't think we would have ever expected that the police would resource the PSPO in and of itself. What we are wanting the police to do, and what they have committed to doing, is that they will enforce it when they are out and about on their other patrols and duties. And I think that's quite important. And they have certainly given an undertaking that operationally they are very committed to using the powers when it's appropriate to do so. I think we also shouldn't overlook the fact that simply having the PSPO in place enables us to do things which are slightly or are short of enforcement, but achieve the desired result. So, for example, there aren't, many times a week, our officers and police officers will take open cans of alcohol or bottles of alcohol from persons wanting to consume them inappropriately in our town centre. We do that under the terms of the PSPO without having to resort to enforcement. So it works at many levels, Chairman. I think it's all to the positive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's outcome rather than sanction often, isn't it? It's just doing the right thing. Richard, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Chair. I think in terms of the police response, I think, as has been said, it's a fairly standard response from the police in terms of PSPOs. And whether people agree with it or not, then you can understand it, because then in lots of other places, then the PSPOs can be put in place for fairly minor things, which are things like having dogs on leads and things. You wouldn't expect the police to be enforcing that. One important thing about our PSPO in Dartford is a lot of the things that are in it are in line with the Police Commissioner's crime plan. So it's more likely that the police, when they're out and about, will be able to use our PSPO. So actually give them more powers to use it. I think one of the important things within this report is in the past, a lot of the police, like not our CSU police, but then the response police haven't necessarily known about it. So now, as he's mentioned, I think it was 3.21 in the report, there's been an undertaking to train those response police on this. So actually, there's good reason to be confident that our enforcement of this will be bolstered going forward. And also, we've got more enforcement capacity at the council as well. So yeah, I think this is definitely a good thing. It's definitely a good thing that we're keeping it.
Good, thank you. Until you mentioned it, I'd forgotten the issue of credibility, because there was I think some councils fell into all sorts of traps when they first had it, and they introduced the PSBO for some pretty unreasonable reasons, didn't they? I mean, I think sleeping in doorways was one of them, and it was used as a way of kind of almost criminalising people who were homeless and having some difficulties. And I think we absolutely have swerved that. I mean, it's just not the right use for it. We're talking here about actions that most people would regard to be straightforwardly antisocial and have an impact on other people, which is negative. So which doesn't apply to those who are homeless and in difficulty. So I think we're using it very sensibly, and also I'm sure the police are aware that people who are behaving antisocially in one part of town at one time are very likely not to be isolated in those offences. They're very likely to move on to do other things in other parts of town if not checked. And so I think, you know, we're doing the right thing here, and it's a very good system. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Okay, I don't think there was any issues from Cabinet Advisory Panel on this. I think they actually did. I don't think they discussed it very much. Oh, they discussed it.
They did raise some issues, just seeking clarification around the data
CCTV.
and the extent of the coverage and where the data related to. And the Community Safety Manager, Tony Hanley, confirmed that we were talking about the town centre itself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's prime. I mean, I know it does extend to wider areas, but its primary role is to defend the War Memorial and places of civic significance, and to ensure that those areas are kept, you know, nice and available for people to visit, and to you know, there's some dignity around them. So that was our main thing. But yeah, I saw that now. Okay, all right. Members happy to endorse that recommendation that we press on with the PSBO then for another period? It is the same refresh period, is it? It's another 3 years, or is it a... Yeah.
It is exactly the same period, Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman, if we're finished with this item, would you mind if I turn my camera off?
Of course.
I'll stay here, but I can't cope with this at all.
Well, it has a certain Andy Warhol. There's an Andy Warhol look about it, though. It's really good.
Yes.
Dear, oh dear. Okay, item 10 then is information technology resilience arrangements, where we've just had a bit of an example of why we need better technology available to our senior staff and colleagues. I think we should buy some more webcams is what we need. Yes, so this is a really important issue, and I'm not the right person to introduce it, because I hate spending money on things that are kind of below the line and don't get seen very much. But I do understand this is really, really important. Sarah, do you want to take us through it? What we're about to do?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the Council needs to ensure that it's able to continue to perform its functions in the event that an emergency were to occur. So while staff are now able to work remotely and meetings can be held virtually, these arrangements rely on access to the IT systems hosted in the Civic Centre. Our current disaster recovery plan relies on a single server in the disaster recovery suite, which is located away from the Civic Centre. In the event of total failure or loss of access to the Civic Centre, additional servers would currently need to be purchased, and therefore the recovery timeframe is unknown, and there would be significant impact on our ability to continue to serve the public. We've therefore been looking at options to enhance these arrangements. The different options are detailed in the report, but the most effective solution, and the one recommended to you, is to increase the disaster recovery site capabilities by mirroring the operational configuration in the Civic Centre at the disaster recovery site. And this would allow for a timely and predictable disaster recovery plan and would minimise any disruption to the public. The cost could be funded from the EU transition funding, which is aimed at supporting business continuity arrangements. This item wasn't called down by CAP, however, some points of clarification were requested as detailed in the minutes. So these were around the timescale for implementation, how we would ensure that the data at the recovery site was consistent with that held at the Civic Centre, and the estimated lifespan of the old equipment being transferred to the recovery site. So I can confirm that it's intended to start implementation immediately, providing we get approval tonight, with the aim of completing this definitely by the end of the current financial year, but hopefully sooner. Systems and data will be copied overnight, and there will also be daily overnight backups of data once the new arrangements are fully operational. It's intended to conduct an annual resilience test initially, but hoping to move to 6 monthly testing in the future. And with regard to the age of the equipment, We've got 2 servers currently that are around 2.5 years old. We would expect a working life of at least 5 years, so they have still got some life within them. But servers are becoming increasingly reliable these days, so we are confident that the proposed solution put forward to you tonight puts us in a very strong position with regards to business continuity arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you. I was pleased to see that we're going to start the resilience testing upon implementation. Is that right? Quite soon after implementation. Can you just reassure me that test does include not just our own resilience, but it also includes the security of the data, does it? Because it's always one of those issues that will concern people, that I think if we're shadowing data somewhere or storing it somewhere else as well, that data is as secure as our data. Because I think it's no secret that local government does receive lots and lots of denial of service attacks, and we do receive lots of attempts to hack our systems. I don't know whether they're corporate or whether they're national or just individuals, but it's quite common for local authorities to get these attacks. So it will include that consideration once we've got that data somewhere safe, will it?
Yes, and we're very, very hot on data security, security of our systems at Dartford. We have an annual test that's undertaken, and we score very, very highly in that. And the IT team are constantly looking to make sure we're up to speed and up to date with the latest protections with regard to security. In fact, we've recently just implemented something around remote access to make sure that we're as secure as we can be.
Sure. Andy?
Yeah, thanks. It's good paper. I can see why you want to do this, and it's a sensible thing to do. Having gone through a similar experience with my own business recently, one of the things you might want to consider, in fact, I would suggest you do definitely consider, is the cloud-based locations for the storage. So we use this sort of term cloud-based, but thinking it's over there somewhere, but it's actually on a physical server in a country somewhere. And I would definitely recommend that make sure it's in the UK. So some of these services are hosted overseas, some are in the UK. Given the data that's being held and potential issues over future arrangements with data transfers between countries, I would suggest that you ensure that the data locations for the backups and for the cloud-based services are UK based. And then, so that's a suggestion. And the second is a really parochial question. Will this change the arrangements for members and their IT connection?
It should be seamless. That you shouldn't really notice any difference yourself. It's just that if we were to lose access to this building, then it would be much more seamless. Whereas at the moment we'd probably be down for quite a few days, to be honest, if not a week or more, before we'd be able to recover. But under this, it should be. At the moment we're planning on 24 hours. We'd be up and running again. But hopefully over time we can reduce that to minutes rather than hours. That's the longer term plan.
That's very good, Mr. Martin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think if this year has taught us anything, it's to expect the unexpected. And as I say, although this is an expensive undertaking, fortunately the grant's come along at the right time. The grant is absolutely focused upon this. Is exactly what we should be using it for. It's a business continuity grant to help us manage any uncertainties out there, and I think we're using it for exactly the right reason. And it will give us that opportunity then to be able to look our data auditors in the eye and our resilience auditors in the eye and say we're now fully resilient. And it's a good move. Good move. Okay, members happy with this? Okay, thank you very much indeed. On then to item 11, which is the financial contributions to parish and town councils. I'm delighted we're still doing this. I know lots of councils took the axe to this a long time ago, but I think our parish colleagues appreciate what we do. Some of the amounts of money aren't particularly significant, but I think symbolically they do at least suggest that we're passing the money on, and they are being passed on in the proportions of the spend. So I think that's sensible. It is reducing over time, but nevertheless we are still continuing to support our parish colleagues, and we also make the point that on top of this, of course, we have the capacity building fund, which is there and operating very well and still putting money out to parishes in slightly larger proportions than this actually. to assist them with particular projects. But Mrs. Martin, I don't think it's fairly straightforward. This, isn't it? Does it need any particular introduction?
Oh, if I could just point out a couple of things, if I can. Just firstly, that the heading, unfortunately, that should read financial contributions to parish and town councils 2021. So apologies for that. And yes, it's just.
Well, we could just leave it and then just,
But yeah, just the other thing really is we do recognise that with COVID, we have seen an increase in the number of council tax reduction scheme applicants, which obviously has a knock-on impact to the parishes and the amount of council tax that they're able to collect. So whilst we have been reducing the amounts to parishes year on year, this year we've taken the decision not to reduce it, just to give them that extra protection whilst the council tax reduction numbers are increasing.
Yes, looking at the figures, there's probably only one council or maybe two where this money is what you might call structural to them. The others, I think, probably take it as a useful extra spend for them. But I think even so, give those two councils, I'm sure, appreciative of the fact that we've buffered them a little bit this year. So yeah, okay, yeah, I should have mentioned that. Okay. Anyone else on this? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Are members happy with that then? All right. Item 12 then is the local scheme of support for council tax. This is altogether more complicated. So Mrs. Martin, off you go.
Well, this is the scheme that replaced the old council tax benefit.
Oh, so complicated.
So it's basically providing support to those who are struggling to pay their council tax because of low income. This year, we're not proposing to make any changes to our current scheme, so we're literally just rolling the scheme over that we've currently got into the new financial year. So I don't really think I need to give any more information.
But it is attracting more applicants, is that right?
We are seeing an increase in applicants just because of the pressures of COVID, where people have been furloughed or have unfortunately lost their jobs.
Yeah, and although I make the joke, I've got you, Andy. Although I make the joke about it being complicated, it's actually from the residents' point of view, it's relatively simple to acquire and understand, isn't it? I mean, it's complicated in terms of the formulas at this end, but it's actually quite easy to roll out and deliver, isn't it?
We simplified the scheme last time round when we reviewed it, so it's now done on an income banding system. So depending on what income you have, you fall into a certain band as to the amount of discount that you'll get.
Okay.
And you're not going to change that frequently between bands, so it has to be quite a significant change of income to change into a different band, just to simplify the process.
Thank you. Andy?
Yes, I think Mrs. Martin's underplayed her hand there. We actually come under quite a bit of pressure with the other recipients of the council tax to not be as generous as we are at the moment. And so actually, just by saying we're rolling it on, I think is first class. It's a good piece of negotiation and a very good recommendation, especially given the time that we're in, where the last thing we want to be doing is to reduce the amount of support we give those that are most vulnerable in our community. So I congratulate you on getting to a point where it sounds boring, we're just rolling it on, but actually it was quite an achievement. So well done. Thank you. I support it, of course.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on this? No. Okay. Thank you. Members happy then with the recommendation that we roll this forward? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Item 13 then is the first of our two budget monitoring reports. This time focusing on revenue. It's a substantial document. Again, Sarah, do you want to introduce it for us?
Thank you. Yes. So this presents the projected outturns for the revenue accounts for 2021. So we've got to that time of the year when we look forward and see how much we think we're going to spend or receive in income up to the end of the year. As you'll be aware, our finances have been severely impacted by COVID this year. We've seen big increases in our costs and reductions in our income. The good news is, though, that the grants that we've received from central government, we anticipate to more or less offset the increase in costs that we've incurred over the course of the year. They've announced funding of 1.8 million to cover our costs, and we think that's more or less in line with the additional costs that we'll be expecting to incur. With income, we've submitted our first claim for the year, which covers April to July for 293,000, which the government have now said that they will pay in full. So this means that for the income losses we've incurred directly as a result of COVID, we take the first 5% of the budget the council has to take as a loss, and then the balance is split 75% with the government picking up and 25% with the balance. So there will be some income loss to us. But despite the impact of COVID, we're actually projecting an underspend at the year end of around 900,000. And Appendix B to the report goes through the various main variances that make that up. So I wasn't anticipating going through those, but I'm happy to take any questions on any of those variances if I can.
No, I think it's not necessarily go through them all. I think there's an underlying thread though, and I mean, when councils normally talk about overspends and underspends, they are normally indicative of something inside the council. One of my predecessors used to say it was budgetary failure, whether it was underspend or overspend, and that it's normally indicative of something. I think what we're seeing here is a massive global macro effect on everybody's spending, and where you see underachievement of income, or where you see overspending, I think it's all to do with the fact that we've either had to stop an activity or that we've had to invest in that activity because of COVID. And I think it's fair that we should, carry on scrutinising this to make sure we don't use it as a cover. COVID mustn't camouflage things going forward. We don't want to emerge from this and find we've got a structural problem that emerged in the middle of COVID and we ignored it because of COVID. We've got to make sure we keep on top of this. But I've gone through it with a relatively fine-tooth comb using my, not great understanding of these kind of detailed figures, but we've got some clever brains around the cabinet table, and I think most of it is completely understandable and explains where we are with things. Andy, is that fair? Have I summed that up fairly?
Yes, I wasn't going to go through the report and speak positively about it, but it's a well laid out report. What I was going to add on top of this was one of the things that's been mentioned within the report was the reduction in income from the different sources of income that we have, and particularly here I'm talking about business rate and council tax. Mrs. Martin and I joined a meeting earlier on this week with one of the larger contingent collectors of council tax, where some other councils outsource their work and we don't. And I was really delighted to learn that we weren't being dragons here. We weren't the people that were being less forbearant than anyone else. We were actually doing a very good job of supporting our residents that are in need. So it's a theme to my comments today, but I think the theme is consistent with our overall approach to the pandemic, which is to be very supporting, whether it's with food or whether it's with financial help, such as people which are finding themselves in arrears. So both our business side and our consumer side of our collections, our rates of non-collection are consistent, if not slightly higher than comparable councils, which actually is a good thing, not a bad thing. It means we're supporting people.
Yeah.
I would...
In terms of our responsibilities, though, as an executive, that one of our obligations is to look at to make sure we're not seeing structural problems inside those departments that's being camouflaged by COVID, isn't it? I mean, that would be a sensible step for us to take to make sure that we're not just seeing some things that are where there are other problems. Because I mean, in the course of a year, some of these things will overspend, underspend, and we'll address them, and we'll want to know why. There is a danger if we're not really astute that COVID camouflage becomes one of the reasons why we don't look at stuff. I mean, we do really have to do that, don't we? I know we are, but I mean, I'm explaining really why we do it. I mean, it's
well, hence we had the meeting. I mean, we're not complacent, and then we had that discussion with them, which was quite a lengthy briefing, and we're going to have a follow up to ensure that we're not missing a trick. But it was also, sometimes you work in isolations here, and it's quite useful to get the reassurance that out there, it's not just us, and our approach is not particularly hard compared to others.
No.
Yes, we can tackle the arrears both in all the different collection funds at a later point and make sure we optimize it. But right at this moment, the emphasis on supporting the vulnerable is the right one, I believe, in this direction we've taken as a cabinet. And we've had that external evidence that that's what we've been doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think talking to other council leaders as well, we do remain in a very good position comparable to some councils. And I think that it just, again, it makes that the rainy day approach we take can seem terribly churlish at times, and when people are desperate to spend in normal times, having a reserve, I mean, how many times have we seen calls on the reserve made just for this, that and the other, and we've had to resist that on the basis that actually the reserve is there for a reason. We didn't know COVID was coming, of course, but we do know that there's always budgetary uncertainty ahead in some form, and our rainy day approach, I think, has served us very well. So I'm very impressed with our work on this, and Sarah and Tim Sams, who's not here tonight, deserve an awful lot of credit, I think, for steering us through this. Okay, anyone else on this? No? Okay, thank you. If members are happy to accept recommendations, then that we note the progress. On then to item 14, which is the similar version to regard to capital programme. Is it pretty much the same? Although this does contain probably the most complicated kind of shenanigans over our spend on social housing, doesn't it? Which we probably ought to spend a little bit of time just explaining to make sure people do understand it, because it looks like a quite a large overspend, but actually it's been done for all the right reasons. Do you want to have a quick? You have a quick first stab at it, Sarah, or the whole report, and then that in particular.
Okay, thank you. Well, like the revenue, this is looking at the capital programme and the monitoring position for 2021. With regard to the general fund programme, there's been quite some significant underspends, which are largely to do with the slowing down of the programme because of COVID, where contractors weren't able to get onto site. And they were to be expected, but we will pick up the spend on those schemes when we can. With regard to the HRA, as the leader has said, yes, there's a big overspend on the new homes programme, but this is actually being quite deliberate. It's funded from the one-for-one capital receipts, and these have to be spent within a set time period, or else we have to return them with interest on top. So we've actually deliberately been speeding up the programme to make sure that we can spend that money and that we're not incurring the interest. So it makes perfect sense for that decision to have been made. So while it looks like an overspend, it was for genuine reasons.
And it irons out in the wash, doesn't it? Because that money is money we won't be spending in the future. We've just brought it forward, really, to spend.
Exactly, it's just bringing forward from one year to the next.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I don't know whether there is a different answer to this, but the central government have set up the scheme whereby money from when we talk about one for one, it really is it's the money we receive on the receipts of right to buy, and we are allowed to disperse that money back into our housing stock. But we have to spend it in the proportion that we acquire it in terms of the number of houses sold. Well, that changes. That's not an even cash flow of money. So some months lots of people will exercise their right to buy. Other months, no one will. Well, I'm not sure no one does, but very low numbers do. So what that means is that in a few years' time, when you're required to account for that, our need to spend it is in exactly that profile, which is really silly if you think about it, because when you're trying to develop a housing program of social houses, you don't spend money that way. I mean, you have to commit to it. So I think we've done the right way. In fact, I know we've done the right thing here, and it's also a reflection of one of our early decisions taken at Cabinet to exercise spending in the market as well. And so we're starting to acquire properties in different ways from usual now, including auction properties and direct purchase. And it means that we're, the winner at the end of this is the resident looking for housing. And in financial terms, we don't have to return money to central government. So I think it is the right thing to do, although it does look like a big overspend, and it looks like, but as he says here, it has a beneficial outcome. So, okay. Does anyone want to talk about any of these issues in here? No? Okay. Everybody happy then? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. On then to item 14, which is the delegated decision taken on SO 38, the local restriction resport grants. Again, for members of the public listening in on YouTube, SO 38, Special Order 38, is where we have to bypass the usual democratic processes inside the council in order to exercise something that's urgent. In this case, this is the grant which is being put out to support local businesses who were required to close during the period of the national restrictions during November, and additionally those businesses that may not have been required to close but nevertheless found themselves with some losses as a result of that of those restrictions. There is more to come from us in relation to the future. We've still got money to spare and spend on supporting businesses going forward, but this was very specifically to do with that November national restrictions. Have I kind of summed that up, Sarah? Is that all right?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Got nothing to add. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And we signed it and it's done. So we're reporting it to you now. Members happy with that? Okay, thank you. Item 15 then is the minutes of the meeting of the Strategic Housing Board. I'm really pleased with the way this board's developing. It's always it's a bit nerve-wracking when you introduce a new board to something to see whether it's going to fly or not and make some difference. And I think under David Moat's chairmanship and the very active participation of members across the council, I think it's really making a difference. And I think housing appreciate it. And I think we're starting to get some traction in terms of the information we're getting out there, just to make sure that we have a very complex housing market now in Dartford, and at one end there is a great housing demand for people who may not have the greatest income and availability to housing. And at the other end, we also have a demand for those who are running businesses and our key workers who may have the financial wherewithal, but don't necessarily have all the capacity to get the financial products that they need. And that also can affect on it. And at the same time, we're getting immense pressures on us from outside forces buying up our houses, moving in, migrations of people in and out. And so I think it's very good for us to have a little committee here, working group, which is fleet of foot, and able to provide information. And I think it's fair to say, I haven't checked myself, but I think the first iteration of the housing advice is now available online on our website. So I think if you visit it, there is now more advice for people seeking housing at all levels, suited to their position. Sonia, have you seen it? Have you aware of that happening, or am I perhaps I've seen a better version of it, a beta version of it, and it's not out yet?
It will be on the housing website, so it
Yeah.
will be on housing rather than planning. Yeah.
No. Okay. All right. Perhaps I've seen an early version of it then, but we will soon be putting more information out there, so that dependent on your circumstances, whatever your circumstances, you should be able to get information about the kind of housing opportunities that are available in Dartford for you. So I'm very pleased with that. Members happy with that? Okay, thank you. I think then the only item now is to consider. In fact, we don't need to do that. We can exclude the. If anybody wants to talk about the methodology used for the town centre regeneration framework, we need to go into exempt status. But otherwise, I don't think we do. Do we? Does anybody want to talk about that? Okay. So, Mr. Twyman, have I missed anything? Have I?
No, Chairman, that's everything on the agenda.
That's a wrap, is it? Okay. Just a quick word then. First of all, on capital spending, I've got a bit of a surprise for Sarah. I don't like springing big capital spending on you in a public forum like this, Sarah, but I think Mrs. Green may need a new webcam. So we might need to think about buying Mrs. Green. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's gone right now. It's gone right now. Fantastic. I liked it before, actually. That was pretty groovy. A bit of Austin Powers about it. Okay, so that's it. And secondly, while we've been talking, Downing Street have talked about the rising COVID concerns they have in London, Essex, and sadly Kent. So I think the message from us is to continue to be vigilant. I know we're all getting terribly, terribly fed up with this, but actually it's all in our hands now. This virus does only transmit by people allowing it to transmit, and that means getting close without masks and getting too close to people and breaking the rules. And I think all these celebrities are doing it. It's disgraceful, really. Actually, I think in many cases it's worse when people in public eye do it, because it's just awful. There's a difference between an inadvertent breach and people forgetting themselves, and it's easy to do. I've been out shopping and you suddenly find yourself closer to someone than you suddenly realize and remember what you're doing. Similarly with masks, there's that terrible 10 seconds when you first go into a store and you think, oh, my mask. And now I think that's very different. I think we're all capable of doing that, but I think we must ask that people continue to do the right thing and protect each other. It's going to be the only way forward. And when it comes to Christmas, with these slightly loosening of impacts and restrictions, yeah, it's great that we do that. It's very good for everyone's mental well-being and great for people, but we've got to realise there's a cost to it. And the less we can do and the more vigilant we are, I think the sooner we'll be out of this. Vaccine is very good news, and I think it's coming to this borough soon. I think from my understanding that the first calls and letters have arrived now with people in the very high risk groups in Dartford to make arrangements, and so that's good news. So I think we're underway. But you know, for everyone, let's just stay vigilant and do what we can to protect each other. You know, it's not a race. We need to get through it, and we need to make sure we do all the right things. So thank you for everything, and I think the council is going to continue supporting people. And our final word would just be for anyone who finds himself in any kind of food emergency or difficulty over this period. We've been open right since March with our help services and our people. We've got some great staff here. I actually called on them today myself on behalf of someone who needed some assistance, and they were wonderful, magnificent. They pick up the phone really quickly. They're there, bang, helping. So we're here to help. And so if you do find yourself in a significant and real emergency, do call us. If we can't help you directly, we'll put you in touch with someone who can. But there's no shame at all in asking for help in this very unusual period, and we're here to help. Okay, I think that does us. Anyone else want to say anything? Or are we all there? Cool. Okay. Good night, everybody then. And thank you ever so much indeed. And we'll see you again soon.